There isn't a day that goes by that we don't hear about the evils of white colonialists. You know, the folks that we must thank for the collective misery all of us have to live with today, especially those of us living in Western nations. So let's take a look at some of these horrible folks and what they've done. Well, we can start with Christopher Columbus. For those of you who've never heard of him, he discovered that life existed on the other side of the planet. And only within a mere 300 years of his discovery, the West had brought civilization to Africa, Australia, and the Americas, not to mention Antarctica. But since no one lived there when he arrived, well, I don't know if we can count that. No thanks to these moral dictators, folks like him, human sacrifices carried out by the Aztecs came to an end. I mean, really, what gave them the right to impose Judeo-Christian values on the Aztecs? I mean, after all, live and let kill, no? I mean, the gall of these folks, still wanting to impose their moral values even today, saying crazy things like abortion is murder, come on. That grown adults and children can't be in sexual relationships, well, why not? And that the LGBTQIA2PS spirit movement is seeking to destroy the traditional family. No. How dare these folks try to shackle humanity with their moral virtues? Party poopers. Now, don't get me going on slavery. They should apologize for the West's participation in Ghana's slave trade. Due to this, Europeans brought slaves to the Western Hemisphere, where the descendants of these slaves flourished centuries later due to those white European colonialists freeing the original slaves. I mean, it's obvious to anyone that transporting Ghana's slaves to the Americas was a big mistake. I mean, if anyone had a right to enslave Africans, it was other Africans, as it had always been and continues to be till this very day. Now, I'm not the only one saying this. Hip-hoppers say, for us, by us, when it comes to African slavery. It's high time also they apologize for teaching tribes in the Americas and Australia how to use the wheel in transportation. This allowed Aboriginals to travel and to transport goods, which only served to make their lives easier. How dare they make their lives easier? What about an apology for introducing written language to so many people on those discovered continents and islands? Just think of the damage done by this callous act. Why, it replaced oral traditions with something more accurate than the third-hand retelling of stories. I mean, think of the harm done now that these folks no longer had to simply trust what someone said, but could understand and make sense of it themselves by reading what was written. What about the damage that was done by replacing superstition with science? I mean, really? The nerve of these patriarchs? But not to worry. As the victims of their oppression, we get to have the last laugh, as their descendants in the West have abandoned this and gone back to blaming the weather on the acts of men. No longer following science, just superstition. At a minimum, they owe an apology for introducing new diseases to the New World. I mean, after all, there were no diseases that ever existed prior to them arriving somewhere. I mean, it's not like anybody ever died of anything. I mean, how could there have been? It was utopia. Everyone living in all these places singing kumbaya and roasting marshmallows around the fire. The gall of these colonialists replacing voodoo with vaccines. It doesn't matter that these actual vaccines subdued and even eradicated diseases, doubled and tripled life expectancies, simply doesn't matter, since it was racists that made them, and it was just plain wrong to interfere with nature like that. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Hey, what about the COVID vaccine? Well, first off, it appears COVID wasn't made by nature, nor white European colonialists for that matter. And secondly, we can really call the COVID vaccine, well, actually, we can't really call the COVID vaccine a vaccine because it's neither subdued nor eradicated COVID. What other things should these dredges of society apologize for? Well, what about things like ships Not just any old ships, but steamships, ocean liners, and cargo ships, which brought distant worlds closer together. Seems to me the world was much better off being apart from one another. Now, don't get me started on modernization, which couldn't have happened unless they hadn't figured out how to harness and then generate electricity. Just imagine how much better things were before that. Not only did this wipe out your carbon footprint by, not having any electricity or modernization, but you could easily freeze to death or die of heat exhaustion, depending on where you lived. Sounds like paradise to me. In their quest to enslave humanity, look at what they created. Things like refrigerators, air conditioning, washers, dryers, furnaces. Talk about imposing. What about what made them believe that making life in a house better was a Western value that others wanted imposed upon them? Did they even stop to think that some of us would be happy to just let food rot, swelter in the summer, and freeze our asses off in the winter? Maybe, just maybe, some women were happy beating clothes clean on the rocks or cooking with firewood. Of course, the nuclear family unit is totally wrong. Talk about imposing another Judeo-Christian orthodoxy on others. I mean, let's face it, women had it so much better before. I mean, the chief or head of the village or tribe had his pick of the litter, free to sleep with anyone he wanted, basically using them for his playthings. But not to worry, thanks to leftist liberals, we're basically back there once again. I would be remiss, of course, if I didn't demand an apology from the white devil's devices. Things like the telegraph, telegrams, phonographs, movies, radios and television, mobile phones, and the internet. Because after all, communication should remain local. Chanting, shouting, sending up smoke signals, and entertainment should be limited to ghost stories told around the fire at night. In closing, looks like the Marxist communist liberals are right. The West is the wellspring of all evil. I mean, what did colonialization really get us? But the expansion of civilization and the replacement of such esteemed traditions as human sacrifice, voodoo medicine and superstition, with a Judeo-Christian understanding and values of faith, family, and country. How terrible. Anyway, thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. Please post any comments you have in the comment section. You can also follow me on my Rumble and my Locals account. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do so. And check out some of my past videos, and I will see you next time.